Fresh Economic Thinking podcast, new ideas and analysis with Dr. Cameron Murray and Jonathan Gadir. Hi Cameron, good to talk with you again.
Yeah, great to be back and having another chat, Jonathan.
And you had a viral tweet in the last few days, something that caught everyone's attention and took off in the Twitter sphere.
That's right. That's the name of the game in Twitter land. Even with Elon Musk, it's get the viral tweet. But I think this is, its popularity was very emblematic of many other things that are going on at the moment. So let me read it out.
Mm-hmm.
It says, prediction. In 10 years, it will be hard to find anyone who will admit to supporting COVID lockdowns, school closures, masks, and vaccine passports. So that was the tweet. Obviously, it hit some big accounts. Jay Bhattacharya, the Harvard epidemiologist, he shared it, and now it's just still circulating around.
Like a virus.
Maybe they should have a Twitter lockdown to stop it in its tracks.
Yeah.
But the reason I wrote that is because on Monday night I attended an event called Brisbane Dialogues, which is like a very good Q&A. It's like a panel discussion, invite only. Experts come in a room and they discuss a topic where they very much disagree, but it's well moderated. And the culture in the audience is we're having an open mind and we're actually trying to learn from each other here. So it's a great event. So if you're in Brisbane, Google Brisbane Dialogues. And what happened on Monday was that there was a panel of Gigi Foster, who is an economist from the University of New South Wales, who was on Q&A, the ABC TV program, during COVID, and was slammed as a granny killer for suggesting there were trade-offs to lockdowns and that having a functioning society and economy has health benefits. She's absolutely slammed. She's had more than a year and a half of, death threats and angry emails. She was on the panel with Paul Griffin, who's a Queensland doctor who's been in the press a lot, following the trend and talking up COVID. But what happened at that event was essentially the theme was, how do we deal with the next pandemic? And Paul, Gigi, and the other panelists all sort of ended up saying, we shouldn't lock down again. We shouldn't have closed schools. We shouldn't have made everyone do masks. We shouldn't have made vaccines compulsory. Only 12 months ago, they were, telling the media every day, we can't open up till we've got 90% vaccinated. Put them in jail if they're not going to get vaccinated. And here we are a year later, and all of a sudden, whoopsie, we overreached. We were trying to do the right thing. So there's this great unwinding of COVID panic and this like wave of reality sort of washing over the debate. I'm not sure if you've noticed it.
Not really, because I hear only Norman Swan on the ABC.
Yeah, he's an interesting one, isn't he? What's he been saying lately?
Well, he does repeat quite often that this is not benign. This is not the flu. This is very serious. It's a shame that governments aren't giving the guidance that's required on people to wear N95 masks. It's a shame that we're not. I think he means that the government should do like regulations on indoor ventilation. I don't know. He keeps on saying we're not doing anything on ventilation. I don't know what he means. Forcing people to keep doors and windows open. I mean, I'm sure it's a good idea. I always ask people to do that, but I don't know what he specifically means. And he talks a lot about that we did the right thing during the pandemic and the results are there that show it. And he specifically said that the life expectancy figures Australia has gone up in the international rankings because a dent has been made in the life expectancy figures for so many other countries who had more deaths in their middle-aged and younger population from COVID. And so they've sort of, it's made a dent in their life expectancy averages. So, that's
yeah. Well, look, that's interesting because I think we talked about last time the puzzling excess deaths in Australia happening in 2022, which we didn't really have in 2021. Now, to claim that Australia's, life expectancy is growing is interesting because we only have data for up until 2021, right? So we actually have average data for the 2020, 2021 years, and we don't have any data for the last 12 months. And what's interesting in Australia is we had a very severe flu season in 2019, right? So if you actually look at the ABS life expectancy data, you'll see that 27 to 19, that 2-year average period, we really didn't get any gains. Females essentially no gains in life expectancy in those 2 years. And so he's looking at this 2-year period that has come after a downturn, right? So obviously, life expectancy curves over time, they bounce up and down a little depending if it's a bad flu season or a cold winter or whatever it is. And so he's actually a little bit cherry picking the baseline comparison by saying, look, we've gone up, which is from the 2-year average, 2018 to 2020 to now 2019 to 2021, but also ignoring that 2022 is going to go down as well. So I suspect if we look back on this in a couple of years, it's going to be a much smoother curve, and his claim might not really make a lot of sense.
I don't know if he was talking about the curve, though. It was more how we are in relative to the other countries in the rankings.
Yeah, so that's the thing, right? The 2019 flu season was more of a South Asian, Australian Pacific phenomenon rather than a Northern European phenomenon. So, for example, we go down and they go up, right, in 2019, then they go down in 2020, 21, and we go up. Obviously, we also go up in the rankings, but that's just because the variation is offset by 1 year.
Right.
So I suspect that over time, that will smooth out a lot. And I also suspect that some of that is just more harsh lockdowns and disruption in other, like it's not like Australia was alone in locking down. And in fact, outside of Victoria, it was relatively mild compared to a lot of places. So
yes.
there's also that sort of issue to deal with. But the fact that it's being used to continue to justify sort of panic, and it's a severe problem today, sort of flies in the face to me of what's generally happening, which is, people admitting that we overstepped the mark. We have, I don't know if you've read in The Atlantic, Emily Oster, an economist, she said, let's declare a pandemic amnesty. Let's focus on the future and fix the problems we need to solve, which is essentially saying, yeah, you were right. We didn't need to panic and close schools and mask kids and do all this stuff. That's what's this unwinding of panic that's happening. So I do find it surprising that Norman Swan is still holding firm amongst all this.
And on another ABC personality, Josh Sepps, who's he's a TV personality and an ABC personality, and he has his own podcast. So on his podcast, which I think is called Uncomfortable Conversations, he had a monologue where he sort of defended his position on vaccines, saying that he was wrong for the right reasons. That was basically the summary of the podcast. Now, I listened to it carefully, and I have a lot of respect for the position of being wrong for the right reasons, because he followed the science and he didn't just decide that it felt right. That's all good. But I think there is a problem where he has just taken a very idealized and not evidence-based, to use that phrase, view of how science works, given all we know about vested interests in pharmaceutical companies and how they, for example, with Tamiflu, misrepresented the effectiveness of their drug. And then a few months down the track, after governments had spent billions on it, we find out it's no better than Panadol. So knowing how the pharmaceutical companies get fined for this kind of misconduct and have a track record of bending the rules and bending truth to suit themselves, and of how universities and research institutes and government health institutes operate and often are very inflexible and slow to take on evidence and built on egocentric reputationalism and their own vested interests, etc., etc. So knowing all that, he's kind of bracketed that off and going, no, I took the science and I followed it, and therefore I was wrong for the right reasons about vaccines. And he said, if I went back in time, we presented with the evidence, I would have done the same thing, and I would have, absolutely not change anything I said. Um, so, yeah, I mean,
Wow. Which is sort of, I guess the point of that tweet at the beginning, he's already sort of backed down from his views, but he's saying if it happened again, I'd still do it. And I do wonder how much those views uh, will change as more and more people realize that a lot of what we did was just panicked and didn't make sense. So Emily Oster's saying, she was masking on hikes, masking her 4-year-old son outdoors in the park and all this sort of stuff, and saying, well, we just didn't know, right? So I'd do it all again. But, we did know. I think that's a bit of a cop out, right? Because you had top scientists, writing the Great Barrington Declaration, John Ioannidis saying, yeah, we know this stuff. I've studied pandemics my whole career. The main thing you do is you don't panic. Try and keep social life and the economy functioning as normal as possible so that you can have people doing their normal jobs and, delivering hospital supplies, building new hospitals. If you close people down, you can't actually do those things we take for granted that add value to our lives. So we could have known it, and I think I'll make another prediction. I'll predict that his views will change even further in the coming years, and that his view might change. For example, in this panel on Monday night that I saw, the Brisbane Dialogues, everyone agreed that maybe we should have a binding rule that it's impossible to close state borders again. Maybe we should tie our hands today so that if we panic again about something, it will just be administratively and politically too difficult to succumb to the panic and do things we know had zero value and a lot of harm. So this is how far views have changed from people who were, wear an N95 mask to the park, stay at home, keep kids out of school, make people, force people to get vaccines or fire them. These are people who are really caught up now in that time, who now see that the panic was a real thing. Maybe we should tie our hands a little so that we can't panic next time. So I predict more of this unwinding of those strong views and more uptake of, let's never do a lot of that stuff again, even if we feel panicked and even if we feel like we're following the science and responding to information as it comes, like Josh Seps still thinks he does.
Another unwinding, for a great segue, another unwinding is, the crypto world's unwinding, isn't it?
Yeah, so you've obviously heard about this FTX crypto exchange.
You couldn't make up this guy's name as well, which is, Sam Bankman-Fried, or Bankrun-Fraud, as they're saying.
Isn't it amazing? So the story basically here, look, I'm no expert with what he does because I stopped following crypto very early on. Once I'd sort of dug in and realized there's nothing material there, that fundamentally it was a scam from the start. It was sort of, it served it ostensibly served one function, trading, currency online securely. But at the end of the day, it didn't do what it said it did very well. Like it was doing the wrong thing well. And so I was very skeptical from the start. But this guy convinced so many people, and so many people from, respectable companies, to give him their money to buy crypto, and then he essentially just spent all the money that people gave him. Because he swapped crypto, gave them crypto for cash, and he just went and spent their money for years. And at the same time was donating to politics. He was nurturing this reputation. It's like it's like if Bernie Madoff was like a political player and had a sort of a philanthropic fund. It would have that's essentially the story. But anyway, I predict that it's going to lead to much more unwinding of crypto, and a lot of this, oh, we were wrong about crypto. Yeah, we didn't know at the time. We couldn't have known better. Same with COVID. That's my impression. What's your impression?
I don't have an impression apart from what I enjoy. I enjoy a lot of the comedic takes on this. Well, no, I enjoy the analysis of certain podcasts that I listen to, like Chapo Trap House and True Anon. This is like sort of fringe leftist podcast in the US, where they just go into a bit of his family background and just the personal connections between all these people in the Democratic Party and this guy and his parents, and just you realize just how kind of nepotistic the whole system is. Everyone is someone's kid. They all think they're successful because of their genius, but like, it's so obvious that it's all about the connections that they had.
Yeah, but this scam is so astronomically large. They had a $32 billion valuation, right? This is massive. And I think it's interesting, right? Because a lot of the crypto hype was driven by this libertarian impulse, right? That I don't want to be tracked online. I want to be able to trade securely and use this special invisible money, which is sort of funny because the whole point of Bitcoin is to record every transaction. The only secure thing is not knowing whose identity controls which account, whereas in finance, identifying account holders, like the real identity of account holders, is like the main job of regulated finance.
Yep.
So I find it interesting that it was driven by this libertarian, we're smarter than everyone impulse. And yet now I suspect, the great unwinding will be that everyone wants it regulated some more. Everyone wants, I don't want to be tricked into these financial schemes anymore. I want regulators to step up and do their job. So I suspect we'll see the next phase of crypto being, where were regulators? Why didn't you stop us doing silly things? Despite the fact that everyone was like, I'm a libertarian, I'm going to avoid the regulators, and it's too many rules in finance. So it's a puzzling trend to me, and I'll be interested in how many people change their tune in the next 5 or 10 years about, I was never that into crypto. I just thought it was a good way to diversify because you never know with these things, right? Those people are going to be the ones whose Twitter was like, if you're not getting into crypto, you don't know anything about the future. Right? But all of a sudden they'll soften their stance, and you'll find that, Twitter is probably 50% crypto shills these days, and in 10 years you look back and it won't, you won't find any of them. But is my prediction there.
Okay. Well, since we have a bit of time, I thought I would just ask you about a sort of classic economics problem. You're saying that you think our incomes are not going up, but we're spending like crazy, and this is a bit of a puzzle. Am I characterizing that right?
Yeah. No, the puzzle that's I think a lot of economic analysis online these days is that not that incomes aren't going up, but the wage price index is it's like the consumer price index, but it measures what people earn per hour of work at different jobs. And the wage price index has grown 3% this year, and hardly at all last year, right? It was less than 2% last year. So you've got this wages essentially hardly growing at all, but retail spending booming. Really, a lot of economic indicators uh, the last 12 months, absolutely smashing it at the same time as wages are not really moving. So the retail spending indicator, household spending increased 28% through the year, right?
Yeah.
Wages increased 3%. So what gives? Why do we have, this
Mm.
huge spending boom?
Is
And
it
we have this other
savings?
puzzle. Consumer confidence is down, but
Uh-huh.
everyone's out having dinner parties at restaurants that are packed, complaining about the economy, right, while they're spending.
Uh-huh.
So what is it? And the answer is it's non-wage income, right? So we forget that wages, well, it's two parts. Wages are only about 40% of household income, right? And the wage price index doesn't measure how much income people are earning from wages. It measures how much the price of the wage of the same job changes over time. So what you see is that people are actually earning 7% more in wages, not 3%. So the average job went up 3%, but people change jobs. So people are on average working higher level jobs now, and hence earning more wages. They're also working more, like unemployment rate's gone down, so there's more people working. So actually, the income from wages has gone up 7%. But what's more interesting is the other 60% of household income, right? We've got profits from companies, right? Corporate profits. They are the incomes of the shareholders, right? And when they get that paid that dividend, they go and spend it, right? And they are up 29% in the year, right? Profits, the incomes to households in the form of profits are up 29% over the year. And the income from what's called gross mixed income, which is like people who work for themselves, contractors, plumbers, those type of people, where it's not, they don't pay themselves a wage, but they essentially work for themselves. They're up 13.5%. So what we're actually seeing, we're forgetting that wages, yeah, that's what people earn, and the price of wages goes up or down. We're forgetting that in the macro economy, someone's spending is someone else's income.
Mm.
And so we've got this boom in spending, and we're like, how are we doing it? Well, because the boom in spending is someone else's income. That's how they can sustain it. It's a macro economy, and we also injected a lot of money into people's bank accounts in COVID. The government literally armed all the private sector with funds to spend. So that resolves a lot of these puzzles of like uh, in the rental market, people are saying, how can rents go up in this area by this much when incomes are only going up 3%? And you have to stop and say, actually,
Well, the
the
incomes.
wage price index is going up 3%, but the incomes of households, well, the wage income's going up 7%, plus there's this other 60% of incomes, and they're going up by much, much more. And that's how you're getting this massive boom in spending that we're getting at the moment. And of course, I suspect in the next year we'll see a bit of an unwinding of those that high spending, as well as high interest rates and monetary policy starts to bite. But that's just a puzzle I've been thinking about lately, because those price indexes came out and a lot of people said, oh no, no one can afford anything. And I'm
Mhm.
like, but that's not incomes. You're missing the point.
But surely a very small fraction of the society actually gets any income from dividends from shares. I'm more willing to think, oh yeah, people who are self-employed, like contractors, like that, that is a significant
Yeah.
impact.
Yeah, the distribution is very different of who gets the incomes from profits, but it's actually quite broad. Like all the retirees self-funded, they get higher dividends when they own BHP shares, and profits on mining go up, right? So yes, there's a lot of the issue is distributional, but I think we still need to be aware that it's probably broader than what some people have in mind, this distribution of profits in the economy. It's not just Gina Rinehart and Clive Palmer and whoever. Um, it is a little a little bit broader than that. And if you're talking, tradies and their incomes, 13.5% extra income, and they're not included in this wage price index at all, right? So that's another lot of spending. And of course, when these guys who are making the extra corporate profits go and renovate their house and buy a new car. That again circulates and creates income again for others. So yes, you're right. There's a distributional issue at play, but I think that's probably what's missing, is that you can't just say households can't afford things because of the wage price. You've got to consider all the households and all the different sources of income.
Great note on which to end. Look forward to another stimulating chat next time.
Yeah, great to talk, Jonathan.
See ya.